Hi everyone. It is Sunday evening, quarter to eight in the evening, and it's 25th of October. And yet, looking at the global indices for the week ahead. So, starting off with the Dow, overall weekly chart has a nice uptrend. We are obviously just below this 29,000, which has presented some resistance in the past. I've kind of marked this area in orange here as range bound. We produced a nice little bullish candle last week, and I'm looking to see the daily in isolation ideally break and head a little bit higher. If it fails to do this, if in the next 2 days it sort of starts to break below these lows, then it makes more sense that it's going to come down and test this recent level of resistance for support. If it breaks below that, it's going to start heading down towards 27,000. So the big thing is US elections coming up, and they're 9 days away, so basically week after next, not very far away, and the markets are sitting close to all-time highs. So there's quite a bit there's a lot just hanging over the markets, bit of pressure. In isolation, they still appear more bullish to me than bearish. They are coming up against key levels, so I'm very, very, very cautious as they approach these key levels, because they are usually sellers kind of sitting in that area. They're also still a little bit overextended on the monthly. Going and having a look at the S&P. Same thing again, it's come back, produced a nice little bullish candle here, sitting right underneath that level of resistance, so just here. So it's reasonable, I think, this week for me to kind of expect and anticipate the market's going to attempt to come up and see if we can get past that 3.5 level by the end of the week. As I said, still overextended a little bit on the monthly, but got some really nice monthly support at 3,300. Then look at the Nasdaq, which is just kind of coming back down here and hovering around daily resistance or previous highs at any rate, and potentially looking to find some support this week. So again, I'll also look at the Nasdaq, as it tends to be one of the leading indices, and look to see if it suddenly just fails and falls through that level of support and then starts to head down towards 11,000. If that's going to happen, obviously everything else is going to follow suit. So the one that I'll be watching the most will be the Nasdaq. But I also think it's very keen to test at that 12,000 level again. So I've just marked, because it's the roundest number in this area, I've marked 12,000 as a significant price level that I would like to get past. So we do have a lower high on the weekly, and I think that's worthwhile mentioning, and we are overextended on the monthly. So yes, it is fair and possible that this could be a lower high that we'll look back at some point. We've had a decent retracement in the past, which was to this area, which was close towards 10.5, which is what I was asking for. I said a medium or a retracement down to this area would make sense, and a larger retracement down towards below 10,000. But for now, I still think the market is slightly more bullish than bearish, and so I'll be looking for either breaks to the downside or to the upside. But just looking at some of the non-US markets, or starting to head away, mini Russell, excuse me, the Russell 2000 is still a US market, had a really nice bullish hold at previous highs, so testing that level of resistance for support, doing really well with that, and so that looks relatively decent. The weekly is still trending to the upside, and in fact that monthly starting to look really good as it starts to head up towards those previous highs. So that's still looking, that supports the idea of that more bearish market. What's wrong with me? It supports the idea of a more bullish market rather than more bearish. But as I then head away from the US market, starting to look at the UK here, the weekly here starting to look more and more kind of bearish. It's been going sideways, keeps dipping below that 5785 level, and also on that monthly starting to look as though it just doesn't have that strength to climb. So it's looking more bearish than bullish here. And then looking at Germany, the DAX is just bumping its head up against this 13,000 level. There's definite support closer to that 12.3 level, but not giving a lot of clarity on it, and largely going sideways. And that sideways is very similar. It's also in the French CAC. It's also in the Euro stocks market, just up here on that weekly chart on the top right-hand side here. So, but it looks a lot clearer, or at least the resistance that it's finding is a lot more obvious on that monthly time frame. It's really struggling to get over that level. So non-US markets, in other words, Europe and the UK, are struggling. They're struggling to get the same kind of enthusiasm. Then having a look at Nikkei, we can see that overall that had been a little bit gappy and spotty, but overall looking quite nice and bullish. It's starting to head up into its all-time highs here, about 24,000. And so I really think it wants to see if it can test those levels, and so I'm keeping an eye on it to see if it can head up towards this during this week. The S&P as well, sorry, the ASX in Australia, the S&P ASX, they're also testing its, bumping its head up against that 6,200 level. Right, very nice bullish candle there for October so far, looking really, really nice. But let's just see if it can, I'll be looking this week to see if it can kind of get on top of this level, looking to see if it can find some support. And that's really what that's struggling with at the moment. So just to recap, the US markets, I'm going to be looking for at least initially to see if they can find the momentum to come up to test the recent highs. Especially with the Nasdaq, for example, the Nasdaq will really be the one that I'll be paying the most attention to. Will be potentially, if that does start to fall through recent support, I'll start to look for fresh lows on that. And cautiously, very, very cautiously trade it to the downside. There's just not enough for it to convince me that there's a longer term bearish kind of downward momentum, that I wouldn't commit to anything long term at this point in time. And actually, I guess the same applies to longer term moves to the upside. Although in principle, I'm always generally more bullish on bearish in the than bearish in the markets. I'm just, again, so close to so many highs, so many of the markets going either sideways or potentially hitting lower. I'm just a little bit more cautious of that. I do think that effectively the markets are just waiting to see what's going to happen with the election, and therefore the moves the market, it's even possible, could of course go sideways. So it really means, and I just have noticed that the theme tonight across the markets is kind of medium risk. When I say that it's medium risk, what I mean is that I'm looking to take profit sooner. I'm going to make sure that my stop loss is very much in place and potentially even trailing it or updating it relatively quickly, taking profits off the table, trying to get to break even a lot sooner. So for me, that's medium risk. High risk is potentially a market I may not want to participate in unless I see a really good setup within a small window. But I expect the windows of opportunity to be small and temporary, rather than a sustained series of opportunities throughout the rest of the week. And so in this case, again, I'm looking for small windows or small trading opportunities on the lower time frames may present themselves, and they may come and go depending on the day. So that's why I marked it as medium to high risk.